roles, the great director John Ford selects you to star in 20th Century Fox's How Green Was My Valley. You've starred in 5 pictures for him, more than for any other director. And there in our audience is Mr. John Ford, right down there.
My favorite director.
Well, you're going to see him at the party. John, what do you got to say to this?
Brilliant Colin Jazz.
Good.
I hope it's all good. Knowing Mr. Ford and Maureen, I don't know, but I guess it was all right there. Thank you very much.
What are the girls doing here?
Here are 10 fine actresses who appeared with you in How Green Was My Valley, and whom John Ford calls his rosebuds. They were all in How Green Was My Valley. Thank you very much, Mr. Ford and the Rosebuds. In 1941, Maureen, you get married, a marriage that is dissolved a number of years later. June 30th, 1944, your daughter Bronwyn.
And it brought forth a brand new Western star named John Wayne. Right.
Same gun, Dave. Still working. I'm working a little, too.
I've heard. John is an actor in Westerns, one who has got a great string of years as #1 at the box office. What do you really like about the Western?
Well, I like to work in Westerns because they're usually simple, uncomplicated stories. They're folklore in its purest form. Cowboy's a little more than 100 years old, yet he's had more written about him than any real or fancied figure in all history. His way of life and earthy approach to survival have been an inspiration to kids and grown-ups in all nations of the world, from the day that Gary Cooper first said, "When you say that, smile, mister," to last night when another Western hero, Ward Bond, said, "Go ahead and draw, I'll wait for you." And then I like him for personal reasons. Before I tried on my first big hat, I lived in a furnished room. Now I come home and put my feet on my own sofa. Westerns made that possible. Most of all, I suppose I like the folklore and the man the cowboy is. And I'm proud that in my life I've had a part in the telling of his tale.
John, may I ask you to introduce us to the man who introduced you to pictures?
Pappy Ford?
Yep.
He's been many things to me. We started our association many years ago when he kicked me when I wasn't sitting down. I think he's probably the greatest storyteller in the business. Can't get his pipe on his mantelpiece for the awards, Critic and Academy, that have been given to him for his work. He's made all sorts of pictures, but he's, I think, the first director to ever develop the Western to its true classic state. Has a feeling for the pioneer American and the ability to express it to the eye of the camera. To him, nothing is impossible for an actor. He's a hard taskmaster, but his ability commands respect. Every actor in Hollywood wants to work with him. I have only one bit of advice to the young ones. Don't ever disagree with him standing up. Liable to wind up like I did. Pappy Ford.
How do you do, Mr. Ford? You did introduce John Wayne into pictures, am I right?
That's correct. Duke was an undergraduate at USC when I first saw him. He was young Duke then, now he's old Duke. He was our prop man, or third assistant prop man, during his summer vacations. I asked him what he wanted to do, what he was studying for. Was he taking pre-med, pre-legal? And he said, no, he wanted to be a director. So eventually he drifted into small parts and into bigger ones, and when the story of Stagecoach came along, I said I'd like to have Duke for it. And we got him in.
Don't you want another purple?
No, thanks. and there he is. And here he is.
Well, Mr. Ford, a little while ago, Frank Gruber, the writer, called Stagecoach the greatest Western film ever made, and he credited you, and many people agree with him. Do you?
Well, I don't know. I sort of liked my first big Western, The Iron Horse, which was one of the blockbusters of its time, the story of the UP Railroad. One of my favorites is The Searchers, and I think my real favorite is She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, featuring old Duke here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
In a few moments, we're going to show our wide world audience the never-to-be-forgotten chase episode from Stagecoach, probably the greatest thing of its kind ever filmed. But you mentioned the importance of characters. Would you tell us something about that first in Stagecoach?
Well, Dave, we had a fine cast of actors in Stagecoach. As the picture developed, the various relationships between the characters developed. For example, the rough, friendly feeling of confidence between the driver, played by Andy Devine, and George Bancroft, who was riding shotgun, as they call it.
I can't get over the impertinence of that young lieutenant.
Then there was the sympathetic portrayal of the alcoholic doctor, Thomas Mitchell, and his affectionate regard for the mild-mannered little salesman, Donald Meek.
Instead of protecting businessmen, it poked its nose into business.
Also in the Stagecoach to Lordsburg was Claire Trevor, playing the bad woman.
Maybe you'd like to sit next to me. You could put your head on my shoulder. No, thank you.
Who was rejected by the good woman, played by Louise Platt, until certain things happened. John Carradine, playing an ex-Confederate officer who became a gambler in the West.
Is there any water?
Ivor, canteen, please.
And the central love story between the bad woman and the outlaw Ringo, played by John Wayne in his first starring part in a major picture. These were the people and their relationships in the Stagecoach.
And those characters are so varied that everybody in the audience can identify themselves with somebody inside the Stagecoach. They weren't watching the picture, they were a part of it.
Mr. Ford, although you've won 4 Academy Awards and 4 Critics Awards for your pictures, Stagecoach did not win one for you. How come?
Well, Dave, I think in Hollywood, we are very, very particular about the Academy Awards. We try to be very, very just. The year that Stagecoach was up for the award, Gone with the Wind was sort of the main contender, and the consensus of opinion was that it was a better picture, and I quite agree.
Well, of course, some of your greatest pictures have not been Westerns. The Informer and How Green Was My Valley, The Quiet Man, and the production you're working on now, The Last Hurrah. Which of these do you prefer? These are Westerns?
Well, I got a great kick out of The Last Hurrah, which I think is my best picture because Spencer Tracy gives a superb performance in it, and the rest of the cast I think is excellent. But I don't know. I like to get out and do a Western every so often.
I gather you prefer them.
Well, as a person, yes. As a director, I just love them.
And if I may say so, Mr. Ford, that love shows through in Stagecoach, which is called by many the greatest Western of all time. And right now, one of the most thrilling scenes in nearly 60 years of motion pictures comes to us from Stagecoach, The Chase.
Very, very fine friend, Mr. John Ford is waiting over here on Main Street to show you something real exciting, and I'll see you again in just a little while.
Right. Thank you, Gene, very much. See you in a few minutes.
Dawn, we'd like to show you a horse fall. You ready, Chuck? Come on.
Give it to it.
Hey. Hey. Well, that's pretty good.
Get him out of there.
This is Chuck Robison. He is one of our best stuntmen, probably the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ford.
Nice going.
A lot of people have asked about how you do horse falls, whether it's dangerous, whether it hurts the horse, and I welcome the chance to try to explain this afternoon exactly how it is done and what happens. You see, the stuntmen, who are probably the highest paid class in pictures, start training the horse when it's about 6 months old. They watch a lot of colts in a pasture. Of course, every horse, every colt likes to roll when there isn't a saddle on his back. And they pick out the one which rolls the best, the one that likes to roll. And about a year old, they start training him on foot, teaching him to fall. About 2 years old, they start doing easy saddle falls. Now, all this horse does is fall or roll. He does nothing else. He is really the aristocrat of the equine world. He has much attention paid to him probably as man of war or round table or any other horse. He rides in special cars. He has a special stable. And I'd like to show you, for example, how this is done. It's all done by a cue. There was no force used. If you people could switch to slow motion, I think that would show the audience pretty well how it is done. Can you do that?
Okay, in our way.
Chuck, would you do one in slow motion?
Yes, sir.
Is that Twinkle Toes?
That's Twinkle Toes.
What a name for a horse, Twinkle Toes.
Looks difficult even at that speed. They never get hurt, though, do they?
I have been in pictures for 43 years and have made quite a number of them, and I can honestly say that I have never hurt a horse or even scratched one. I'd like to introduce at this moment Jimmy Jacks.
Me, yes, Coach?
No, not you.
Oh, what you want to be, Coach?
This is
Ward Bond.
Ward Bond.
Ward,
This is Jimmy Jacks here. Here's the head of the AHA.
Thank you, Ward, and
Jack, my name
Mr.
is.
Ford. Thank you.
The AHA is the American Humane Association. He is out here on every stunt. There's no stunt done with a horse. You can't even ride a horse across the street without Jimmy or one of his men supervising the thing. And when I said, Jimmy, that I've never heard a horse in 43 years, I think you'll agree with me.
That's right, Mr. Ford. You have a very, very nice reputation.
These boys insure the horses for the, well, for $10,000, $20,000. It's their means of livelihood. And they wouldn't hurt them any more than you'd kick your puppy dog around. Chuck, would you do us a nice fastball now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And those insurance companies certainly wouldn't insure the horses they were taking.
Oh,
Chance of.
they're nice people.
Well, you don't say anything about me making my free falls down the Colorado River on Rio Bravo.
Well, you do one every picture.
Oh.
Someday we'll pay you for one.
I shouldn't open my big mouth. I can see that.
Big.
Not on.
Okay, go ahead, Chuck.
An expert.
Gee, that's great.
Nice work.
Nice go, Twinkle Toes. Thank you, Chuck. This is Chuck Haywood. Ladies and gentlemen, or ladies rather, he is a bachelor. Thank you, Chuck.
Yes, sir.
Feed your horse a little rye and take a little rye. Never mind.
Well, gentlemen, we'd like to thank you all for showing us that in Westerns there's even a good side of riding for a fall. You were just great today. And there's Gene Autry riding into the main intersection of Route and Teutonville, USA.
You know, Dave, I guess the echo of the sound of camera and action has bounced off of these old walls many and many a time. And I get letters